What's up, y'all? I am outside in Chicago. It's a beautiful summer day. I just had a brain treatment that I did at a clinic here, and I'm a little woozy. But when I was walking here from my car, I realized what I had walked by, and it's a story that I think is pivotal in my life that I'll never forget, even with some of the memory loss that I've had. So this building behind me, which right now looks like it is called the Lawson House, and they may have done some renovation, but it's an old building, and it's literally like right in the mix here on Chicago Avenue between Dearborn and State. What it used to be was a YMCA, and it was a YMCA that housed crackheads, homeless people, mentally ill people, and I don't think there was any sort of YMCA component where they had like a gym. I don't know if they did have that or not. It was more of like, it almost felt like a Salvation Army type of place. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I had a moment early in my career as a stockbroker in Chicago where I was evicted from my apartment that I had a little bit of money that allowed me to drop out of college, get my Series 7 license, become a stockbroker in Chicago, because my grandmother, who I was very close to, she was the only one in her family who had any assets whatsoever. And I think she left me like 10 grand. And I had petitioned my uncle to get me that money sooner than later so that I could go and drop out of school. It was after my sophomore year at University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. Come to Chicago, I ended up basically falling into a Wolf of Wall Street firm, just like with Jordan Belfort. In fact, that firm, the one that I worked for, was a spin out of one of the individuals that worked for Jordan Belfort from the Wolf of Wall Street. And there were a lot of these guys out of New Jersey. And the one that I worked for, there were a lot of rumors that it was mob backed. And, it was a scam. They scam people. And I ended up realizing that pretty quickly. The good news is I feel like God used evil for good, because I got my Series 7 license, which is what you need to become a broker, but I had no college degree. But the fact that I had my license and I had this training, because those guys are ruthless salespeople, and I was able to go through a few months of training and learn how to open accounts and to get in touch with people with money and get them involved in stocks. I left pretty quickly when I realized it was a scam. And my story, if I ever get into it in a granular way, if any of you have ever seen the movie Boiler Room with Giovanni Ribisi, I had a very similar experience where, staying late one day, I ended up basically seeing that I heard stories, I heard conversations from my branch manager's office about problems with the SEC, and they came out and they ended up like cutting our commissions way down because they were doing it illegally. We were getting paid too much to sell stock. That's what a lot of these boiler rooms did. And so I observed that. I had a lot of really special little moments at that firm that ended up helping to make my career actually later. It was critical that I had a little stint there, but I was not interested in fucking people out of their money to make money, even at the age I was conscious. And so I ended up getting a job at a firm called Schneider Securities, run by an ex-Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns big producing brokers that started their own franchise firm. And, it was a minimum wage, state of Illinois, minimum wage job. So if you didn't make commissions more than minimum wage, that's what you earned, which was like, I don't know, $800 a month or something like that. It was not a lot of money. My rent where I was staying in the suburbs was it was expensive. I had a crazy story where basically I would get delinquent on I was waiting tables at a restaurant. I would get to try to make ends meet while I was building my book of business. I was building new accounts, and I was betting on one particular company called Modicad. And I was buying it. I was trying to get somebody to buy some every single day. I was on the phone making 200 or 300 phone calls a day, and just talking to people left and right to try to make enough and stick in the business. But the fact is that you work on full commission. So if you don't have customers and you're doing it in a real way, you're not going to rob people, you don't make very much on commission especially if you have a winner and you sell it and you charge a big percentage. Up to 5% is the legal number. If you have a home run for somebody, that's where you can make big money, because if you have, say 50 clients that, bought into a stock at $10 and it goes to $35, and, you basically are able to say, hey, we're taking profits here, and because you've just, tripled your money plus, I'm going to charge you the maximum 5%, which I had a scheduled range that was very fair. 2% if you made 20%, 3% if you made 20 to 50%, 4% if you made 50%, 5% if you doubled your money or more. And that was all on the back end though, so we had to wait for things to work out. So I was buying and building a position in this company called Modicad. I had eviction notices before at my apartment complex, and then when it would get serious, I would go down, and there was a woman, I think she was Latvian, who was the manager of this apartment complex in the suburbs here called Arlington Heights. And we would always work it out. She would work it out with me, and I'd figure it out, and I'd come in with a check, and she would give me a little more slack, and we would work it out. And then one day, I came to my door, and I had this eviction notice that was like, you have 24 hours to exit the premises, whatever. It was a serious one. I waited too long. So I go downstairs to go work it out with her like I did twice before, and she had left the company. She went to go work somewhere else, and I had a different manager that basically looked at me and he said, dude, you have 24 hours to get your shit out of your apartment or the sheriff is going to throw it on the street. So I had to call two friends from Wisconsin that smoked a joint, drove down to Chicago, put my stuff into their car, and we went over to a storage locker and threw what I could in there, left furniture. I had no time I just salvaged like little things. I was sleeping on the couch of a friend that I met through just random stuff. It was actually a God-ordained meeting, but thank God for Larry Jensen. I was staying with him in his parents' house in the south side of Chicago in the suburbs called Flossmoor, in their guest room for about 2 weeks. And it was very difficult to get by. And I was going in every day trying to have a positive attitude. But I was homeless. I didn't have a place to stay. And I was like, I think, I might have to go move back home and quit because I couldn't make a living. But I knew at the same time that I had a lot of conviction that I was about to make it, because this Modicad, I believed in it so much, and our whole office did. And we were betting on it, and you could feel it was palpable faith that this stock was going to pop. And there were a lot of good things that were happening. This was a company before the internet took off that we were funding them with. They had a CAD software program for fashion, so you could actually put fashion in a realistic way and sell it online. And it was used by a number of different companies. It was actually It was Intel became an investor. We had a lot of signs that it was going to work, but we just didn't make the money we were looking for yet. But I had enough clients in it, and I had a big enough position that I knew that if I could just hold out, I would make it. But at the same time, I had no money. I was literally scrounging. I didn't have a home. I was staying at this place that, for a couple of weeks, thinking to myself, if I don't find an apartment soon, they're going to kick me out and I don't know where to go. So I ended up coming to this building right here after work one day, and I walked in to the YMCA filled with crackheads, and I said, how much is it per night? And they said it's $10 a night, and you get a fucking room with roaches and crazy people are across the hallway and whatever else. And I remember walking, I believe I walked right over to that corner over there, which is this is Dearborn. Is that LaSalle? State, Dearborn, Clark. I went over to Clark in Michigan, and I remember staring at this building from the other block, and I was praying, and I was like, what am I gonna do? Because if I go home, I'm never gonna be able to make it out of there, you know, where I come from. I was like, I might be screwed forever. I might never get out. I'm so close, but you know, look at my circumstance. I prayed about it, and I made a decision right there. I said, if I have to do it, I will fucking live at the YMCA until this thing works. I'm not going home, and I'm gonna keep going. And if I have to stay here for a week or a month or 2 months, I am gonna make this work because I'm so close. So anyway, long story short, 1 or 2 days later, walk into my office at Schneider Securities. I was a very super healthy guy. I never smoked any cigarettes. I was an athlete. It was a small office. Everybody smoked cigarettes. It drove me nuts. And there were all kinds of characters in there. And one of the guys that I really didn't get along with at all, he was a hick from Indiana, like a farm town. Indiana University, Indiana Hoosiers, Rodney Smith. And the guys in the office knew that I was having a tough time. And I think somebody mentioned something to him. He comes over to my desk and he says, hey, I heard you might need a place to live. I said, yeah, what's up? He's like, well, I have a studio apartment up on Belmont and Lakeshore that I never really use because I sleep at my girlfriend's every night. If you want to pay half of the rent for the next few months, which was I think it was $550 a month, that I could afford. He said, you can stay in my studio. And this studio was a shock to my system. I was living in Boys Town, what they call Boys Town here. So I was on the verge of the Boys Town area, walking to the grocery store and going, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? I knew nobody in Chicago. I would go to work, I would make my calls, I would grab like a 6-pack of beer and maybe order some buffalo wings if it was a special night. And I'd be sitting in this studio apartment with Indiana Hoosiers collectibles and a fucking futon bed and the worst decorations you'd ever think of. And I just was grateful that I had a roof over my head. Long story short, I think I stayed there for about 3 months, and then Motorcad hit. Stock went from $4 to $25. Right before we got paid once a month, and right before my birthday in December and Christmas, whatever we did in production in November, we would get paid on December 15th. And I thought to myself, because the stock went up so much, everybody in the office, all these veteran brokers, were still buying it from 4 all the way to 25, thinking it was going to be the biggest thing since sliced bread. I said, you know what? We're totally concentrated in this thing. We've made a ton of money. I had people all loaded into it. And I said to myself 2 things. One is, I've got to be prudent and take some profits for people. And the second thing was, why don't I do it now? Because I could actually buy my family some Christmas presents. So I sold 12% to 15% of my Motorcad. Everybody in the office was like, you're an idiot, because it's going higher, and they were buying it directly from my clients. And I think I took home, net of any taxes, this is back in 1995, $28,000. And that gave me some breathing room. And the stock, by the way, ended up going all the way back down to 7, where I bought it back, and then it went back to 25 and back to 7 and back to 18. And then it was bought out by Barry Diller's company in the internet boom. But anyway, this place has a lot of significance to me every time I walk around this area, because that decision, in the face of being homeless and, you know, doubt creeping in that I was like not gonna make it, and I had to retreat and go home, live with my mother, and figure out what was next, I said no, and I will stay with fucking crackheads and keep dialing the phone, because I'm gonna make it, and this company's gonna hit, and people are gonna make money. And I ended up, that started my career, because after that, after I started learning how to take profits appropriately in certain companies and things, you know, then I made like 10 grand the next month, and 13 grand the next month, and 8 grand the next month, and I was off and running to like a career at the age of 21, I think I was at that point. And never looked back since. I never went back to college. My career's evolved quite a bit, and being here today, just looking at this building, the YMCA, the old YMCA, brings up some pretty interesting memories. I just wanted to share that story because, you know, people see a lot of pictures and photos that I'm living La Vida Loca in Greece and renting these expensive homes and shit, but I've been down to my last pennies. And then even after all that happened, that was when I was young, in my 20s. By the time I was 26, I was flat broke, and I did have to go home to Wisconsin for 7 months and lick my wounds and try to make a comeback, which I did. But then at the age of 33 or so, in the 2008-2009 crash, I went totally bust. Nothing. Down to a bucket of change with eviction notices. And, you know, friends I thought that were friends that had a ton of money that wouldn't even borrow me a few grand to fucking pay my rent. And I just, somehow God gave me away. And it was actually after that period where I said to myself, because I had gotten my own internal house in order, that's when I stopped partying, stopped drinking. I had been already sober, if you will, for like 2 years, 3 years, doing a lot of work on myself, and I'm like, I'm ready to crush it, but I am starting from zero. And ever since then, 2011, when I left being a stockbroker full-time, my only career I ever had for 16 years, became an entrepreneur online, and yeah, it's gone pretty well. But I did not, you know, for those of you that are trying to do better and break out, you know, whether it's financially or just in your careers, or, you know, taking risk as an entrepreneur, I didn't have my first apartment until my first apartment that I was proud of, that was a nice apartment, which I furnished and invited people over because it was beautiful. It only cost, I mean, I say only, but at that time it was like $4,500 a month. But it was a wonderful, super beautiful 2-bedroom, brand new condo, all redone, all RH furniture. First place in my life that I had, because prior to that I had lived in a studio in my 30s for 8 years. Prior to that I was roommates with people. Prior to that I was in a shithole in college. Prior to that I had homes when I was a kid and in high school. I was embarrassed to ever bring my friends over to my own house. So it wasn't until I was 39, 40 years old, it was the first time I've had a nice apartment. I'm 49 now. This last decade has been quite a run, but I'm just mentioning this because I've had a lot of ups and downs, but, you know, bouncing back is a part of what you have to do in life. And I've been on the edge of the abyss a number of times, It is incredible, and it is a miracle. You know, if you do have faith in a higher power and or God, you have such a huge advantage. And I had that, and I still have that, and that is my ace in the hole. I know that I'm gonna die someday. I know my riches could go away in a heartbeat, but none of it's gonna happen without his permission until it's time. Nothing can take me out until he says it's okay. Nothing can take it all away unless it's meant to be. And my evolution as a guy who deals a lot with investments and, you know, advises tens of thousands of people on my newsletters and things like that, you know, levels to this day, and I'm still cracking higher, and I'm about to go higher again, I think, and use a lot of what has been happening throughout these last like 5 years for purposeful reasons, not just, you know, I don't do the nice homes and vacation spots for flossing purposes. I'm not a car guy, I'm not a yacht guy, I'm not a boat guy. I could give a fuck about a Ferrari. I still have my 2018 or 19 Range Rover is my favorite car, and I like to live in nice spaces so I can welcome people, because I never had that for most of my first 40 years, and they can be guests at my home, and I don't go out much, I don't party, I don't do any of that, so it's a good thing to have that, as well as the fact that when I travel, I like to live well, so I stay in nice places. Those are my two things, and I don't think I've been overdoing it compared to how much I've been blessed. But anyway, YMCA, baby, are you willing to live in the fucking YMCA with crackheads to make your dream come true?